picture this. You've just bought a vintage car. The kind of classic that turns heads and has a fan club. You're not a mechanic, but hey, how hard can it be? Cut to a year later, and that shiny car is now making strange noises. The paint job's seen better days, and for some reason, it smells faintly of burnt toast. Welcome to the David Tepper School of NFL Team Management, where the Carolina Panthers went from being the cool kid on the block to, well, let's just say a fixer-upper. When Tepper bought the Panthers in 2018 for a whopping $2.275 billion, fans were buzzing. Here was a guy who made his fortune by being smart with money. Surely he'd bring some of that Midas touch to Charlotte, right? Fast forward to today, and it feels like he took the team on a joyride to Oopsville. From coaching misadventures to quarterback carousels that would make a merry-go-round dizzy, the Tepper era has been, to put it mildly, a roller coaster, except with more screaming and less fun. So buckle up as we take a deep dive into the hows and whys of a billionaire turning a once promising NFL team into the league's favorite "wait, what are they doing" story. If you haven't seen our videos before, here on FootballLore, we cover stuff like this often, so be sure to subscribe. Alright, let's go explore David Tepper tantrums. Let's rewind to the early days of Tepper's reign, a time brimming with optimism and the sweet aroma of potential victory. Panthers fans, bless their hearts, were like kids on Christmas Eve, visions of Super Bowls dancing in their heads. Tepper was the Santa Claus in this scenario, except instead of reindeer and a sleigh, he had a billion-dollar bank account and a no-nonsense attitude. He strutted into Charlotte with the confidence of a man who could buy a sports team like most of us buy a coffee. Tepper talked a big game right out of the gate. Words like winning culture and long-term success were thrown around like confetti at a victory parade. He wasn't just gonna keep the Panthers good, he was going to make them great. Fans ate it up like free nachos at a tailgate party. They were ready for their team to ascend to the NFL's elite under this financial whiz. After all, how could a guy who turned hedge funds into gold mines possibly go wrong with a football team? Oh, but hindsight is a merciless comedian. Those early declarations now sound like they were written by the same people who thought New Coke was a good idea. Winning culture? More like, where's the culture and long-term success? Well, if by long-term he meant as long-term as a mayfly's lifespan, then sure, spot on. It doesn't help that this man makes hiring choices akin to boarding the Titanic. Let's take a stroll down personnel memory lane. Matt Rule, the poster child for Tepper's go big or go home hiring policy. With a 7-year, $62 million contract in hand, Rule was expected to be the Midas of football, turning every play into gold. But here's the catch. His NFL experience was as thin as a dollar store paper plate. It's like hiring a high school science teacher to run NASA Mars mission. Sure, there's potential, but you might not want to bet your rocket ship on it. The coaching staff's revolving door spun faster than a carousel on overdrive. Coaches came and went with such frequency that you'd be forgiven for thinking the Panthers HQ had a help wanted sign permanently etched on its doors. This constant shuffle felt like a strategic move and more like someone playing musical chairs with the coaching staff. Every season, fans braced themselves. Who's in? Who's out? It was like watching a soap opera, but with more shoulder pads and less predictable plot twists. And in this high-stakes game of coaching roulette, consistency becomes as rare as a quiet day on Twitter. The frequent changes disrupted team dynamics, leaving players and fans alike in a perpetual state of who's our coach again. This wasn't just a team trying to find its footing, it was a team trying to remember where it put its shoes. And then there's the draft room, which under Tepper felt more like a Vegas casino. Bets were placed and the house didn't always win. The Panthers, in their quest for diamonds in the rough, sometimes just ended up with, well, rough. It was like playing fantasy football, but with real money and real consequences. The team, in desperate need of a makeover, often end up with choices that had fans scratching their heads so hard they needed dandruff shampoo. Speaking of money, let's not forget Tepper's financial wizardry, or should we say blizzardry, because it left fans cold. He handed out hefty contracts like Oprah giving away cars. You get a big paycheck, and you get a big paycheck. Problem was, some of these big paycheck players performed like they were playing in slow motion. This generosity had the salary cap groaning under the weight, like a hammock after Thanksgiving dinner. Fans couldn't help but wonder if Tepper misunderstood the term salary cap as some fancy headwear, rather than a limit on spending. Take, for instance, the curious case of Teddy Bridgewater. Tepper and co signed Bridgewater to a whopping $63 million deal over 3 years, expecting him to be the new face of the franchise. But instead of a face, they got more of an elbow. kind of useful, but not really what you want leading the charge. Bridgewater's tenure was like ordering a gourmet burger and getting a tofu patty instead. Not terrible, but definitely not what you paid for. And who could forget the grand saga of running back Christian McCaffrey's contract? Now, don't get me wrong, McCaffrey's talent is as obvious as a giraffe in a petting zoo, but his $64 million extension felt like betting a fortune on a racehorse with a penchant for napping. Injuries turned his blockbuster contract into more of a blockbuster. As in, it busted the block that was the team's salary cap. These financial fumbles by Tepper were like a masterclass in what not to do in NFL Economics 101. Players were getting paid like they had LeBron James talent in Michael Jordan's body, but the returns were more like, well, let's just say they wouldn't make the highlight reel. It was a case of too many dollars chasing too few touchdowns, and the Panthers' salary cap became as cramped as a clown car at the circus. Let's play a game of numbers, shall we? Picture a graph charting the Panthers' win-loss record. Think of it as a roller coaster designed by a particularly sadistic engineer. Pre-Tepper, the Panthers had their ups and downs, sure, but there were some genuine high points. We're talking about a Super Bowl appearance, playoff runs, and seasons that didn't end with fans weeping into their nachos. Now, fast forward to the Tepper era. If our roller coaster was climbing before, it's now taken a nosedive straight into Yikesville. Post Tepper's acquisition, the win column has become as elusive as a polite conversation on social media. The numbers tell a tale of woe. Think Shakespearean tragedy, but with more touchdowns and fewer monarchs. Wins became as rare as a quiet day in politics, leaving fans and statisticians alike scratching their heads. It's like watching your favorite detective show, but every episode ends with the mystery unsolved. The stark contrast in the team's performance pre and post Tepper is as clear as the difference between a gourmet pizza and a microwave slice. Both are pizzas, but oh boy, do they leave a different taste in your mouth. Turning our gaze to the Panthers faithful, the fan response in the Tepper era has been, well, let's call it less than enthusiastic. The mood in fan forums and on social media has been swinging between despair and the kind of optimism you have when you buy a lottery ticket. You know, hope against hope. Game attendance started to resemble a Where's Waldo book, where Waldo decided to stay home. Fans in the stands were as sparse as a teenager's first beard. And who could blame them? Watching your team struggle week after week is about as fun as a root canal. Then there's the media, the sports analysts and pundits who've had a field day with the Panthers' plight. Articles and commentaries have been as critical as a mother-in-law visiting your first home. Words like mismanagement and downward spiral get thrown around more than a football in a backyard Thanksgiving game. It seems everyone with a keyboard and an opinion has something to say about Tepper's handling of the team, and spoiler alert, they're not singing his praises. And let's not forget the local impact in Charlotte. Businesses that thrive on game day buzz have felt the pinch as much as a tight pair of shoes. Bars and restaurants near the stadium have seen quieter days, with fan enthusiasm waning like a phone battery at 5%. The community's engagement with the team, once as lively as a Mardi Gras parade, now feels like a Tuesday afternoon at the DMV. The ripple effect of the team's performance under Tepper has been felt far and wide, touching more than just the football diehards, but the heart of the local community. Now, let's shimmy over to the grand stage of public statements. David Tepper, in his moments of media spotlight, has tried to tackle the team's issues with the finesse of a politician, which is to say, with optimistic vagueness and a side of, trust me, I got this. In press conferences and interviews, he's juggled words like a circus performer, but even his well-crafted statements often left fans with more questions than answers. It's like going to a magician show and realizing the only thing he made disappear was your sense of certainty. But, let's not skip the juicy bit. The infamous drink dumping incident. Picture this. Tepper, in a moment of what can only be described as misguided enthusiasm, decides to shower some fans with his beverage. Not exactly the shower of blessings the fans hoped for from the team owner. Fans were left sticky, surprised, and probably thinking, I just wanted to watch the game, not wear it. It was a move as baffling as trying to put ketchup on sushi. You could do it, but it'll leave everyone wondering why. So, what's the grand summary of the Tepper effect on the Panthers? Imagine, if you will, a chef with all the right ingredients, but somehow the soup still tastes like it needs a few more hours on the stove. Tepper's decisions, from high-profile hires to financial gambles, have stirred the pot in ways that often left a bitter aftertaste. The team, once a simmering cauldron of potential, now seems to be on a low boil with the lid rattling precariously. His influence has been as subtle as a bull in a china shop, leaving fans and critics alike to sift through the pieces. But wait, there's a glimmer of hope on the horizon. The future, as they say, is unwritten, and Tepper's got the pen. To steer the ship away from the iceberg, he might need to embrace a few changes. Think less splashy moves for the sake of headlines and more strategic, thoughtful team building. Maybe it's time for a return to basics. Solid drafting, nurturing young talent, and creating a team culture that's more about winning games and less about winning the press conference. In the world of NFL ownership, the game's always on, and there's always a chance for a fourth quarter comeback. For Tepper and the Panthers, the playbook's wide open. It's time to huddle up, draw some new plays, and maybe, just maybe, turn those boos back into cheers. After all, every underdog story needs a rocky start, right? That's the tale of how David Tepper has ruined the Panthers thus far. Maybe they'll force him to sell like Snyder in Washington, but we do sympathize with Panthers fans who are going to be dealing with him for at least the next half decade. If you like this video, be sure to press the like button and subscribe. Leave a comment if your team owner is even worse than Tepper, and we could debate it down below. Have a great day, and avoid dumping drinks on your fans.